For nearly 2,000 years, no Jewish temple has stood on Mount Moriah in Jerusalem. 2,000 years of silence, 2,000 years of absence. But in the last 6 months alone, the movement to rebuild what the ancient texts call the Third Temple has gained more political power, more public visibility, and more tangible preparations than in the entire previous decade combined. What was whispered in synagogues is now announced on the Temple Mount itself. What was considered impossible by mainstream rabbinical authorities is becoming the stated policy objective of government officials, and it all began with a group of rabbis who refused to wait for the Messiah. The Temple Institute, founded in 1984 by Rabbi Yisrael Ariel, a man who literally helped capture the Temple Mount during Israel's Six-Day War in 1967, sits prominently across from the Western Wall today, not in a back alley, not hidden, but visible, accessible. This single location has become the operational headquarters for one of the most ambitious archaeological and theological projects of our time. Inside its walls, over 4 decades of meticulous research has produced 95% of the sacred vessels and ritual items required for temple service. But here's what's staggering. These aren't academic exercises gathering dust in climate-controlled storage. They are actively maintained, continuously refined, and perpetually prepared for immediate deployment. Consider the mathematics of this project. According to the Book of Numbers, during ancient temple service, the high priest required specific purple dyes extracted from the murex snail found only in the Mediterranean. These dyes had been lost to history for almost 2 millennia. The Temple Institute didn't just study this problem theoretically. They conducted actual archaeological expeditions. They identified specific coastal sites where these snails still inhabit the waters. They trained craftspeople to extract and prepare these dyes using ancient techniques. Today, they possess working samples of the exact purple used in Solomon's temple, 2,500 years of knowledge reconstructed in laboratories in modern Jerusalem. The Red Heifer Project reveals something even more profound about the sophistication of this movement. 5 genetically pure red heifers were imported from Texas in September 2022. Not 3, not 2. 5. According to ancient Jewish law, these animals must be born in Israel, never have worn a yoke, possess not a single hair of any color other than pure red, and reach a specific age before they can be sacrificed for ritual purification. The Temple Institute partnered with Israeli veterinary scientists to pursue genetic breeding programs, importing frozen Red Angus embryos and implanting them into Israeli cattle. This isn't religious fantasy anymore. This is molecular biology in service of biblical prophecy. By 2024, when these animals reached the required age, the movement publicly announced that they possessed not 2, not 3, but possibly 4 heifers that met all ancient requirements. Israeli Knesset member Yitzhak Pindrus made an extraordinary statement in spring 2024. We are hoping that soon the Third Temple will be built and will be able to eat there from the Passover sacrifices. A government official speaking in the halls of power, discussing not theology but specific sacrifice logistics. This represented a categorical shift. This moved the conversation from the realm of mysticism into the realm of implementation. Then came August 2024. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, a man with genuine governmental authority, a man who controls internal security operations, visited the Temple Mount with hundreds of armed supporters. He didn't pray quietly. He didn't move through discreetly. According to eyewitness accounts, he led an openly defiant prayer service, walking in violation of rabbinical law, declaring his intention to construct a synagogue on the Temple Mount. compound itself. Even more dramatically, Ben-Gvir stated publicly that he would build structures on the very platform where the Al-Aqsa Mosque currently stands, the third holiest site in Islam, administered by Jordan since 1967, protected by international agreements. The historical context transforms this moment into something truly unprecedented. In 1967, after Israeli paratroopers retook the Temple Mount during the Six-Day War, Israel's first chief Rabbi Shlomo Goren led a prayer service on the Mount, an act of such shocking violation of centuries-old rabbinic tradition that Israeli Defense Ministry officials publicly condemned him by name. For over 50 years, this event remained unique. The establishment condemned it. Government authorities prevented its repetition. Religious authorities united against it. But in 2024, the National Security Minister himself repeats what was once unthinkable, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu felt compelled to issue a public statement that there is no change to the status quo, meaning he had to explicitly deny what his own security minister was announcing. The contradiction itself proves something has fundamentally shifted. The movement's sophistication extends far beyond the Temple Mount. The reconstituted Sanhedrin, the ancient Jewish governing body, has been actively training Levite priests for service. These aren't symbolic exercises. Young Jewish men spend years learning the exact procedures for temple sacrifice, the precise movements, the specific Hebrew incantations. The Temple Institute has conducted reenactments of Passover sacrifice ceremonies at the Davidson Center in Jerusalem's archaeological park, drawing crowds of observers, training future priests, normalizing practices that haven't occurred in 2,000 years. This represents what scholars call ritualized preparation. They're not just studying what should happen, they're physically practicing it, making it habitual, embedding it into institutional memory. Consider the theological innovation here. Mainstream Orthodox Judaism has consistently held that only the Jewish Messiah can authorize temple reconstruction. This has been the unifying position across virtually all rabbinic authorities for centuries. It's in the authoritative legal codes. It's consistently reaffirmed. Yet the temple movement has reinterpreted this doctrine. They now argue that temple preparation itself constitutes a form of Messiah invitation. They propose that by creating the infrastructure, by training the priests, by acquiring the ritual items, by conducting the ceremonies, they are accelerating divine redemption itself. They are not waiting for God to send the Messiah. They are constructing the conditions that will summon him. Rabbi Yehuda Glick, the American-born leader who was previously arrested for attempted unauthorized ascent of the Temple Mount, now walks freely on the Mount with protecting police escorts, leading groups of settlers in prayer. This represents a complete inversion of the previous status quo. The man who violated the law and faced arrest is now protected by law enforcement while conducting the exact same activities. His freedom to operate reflects a shift in governmental tolerance, in political priorities, in what officials now permit. The movement has also globalized in unexpected ways, a phenomenon called the Noahides, non-Jews who have abandoned Christianity to adopt partial Jewish observance while following temple movement. Rabbis now number in the thousands across multiple continents. These are people who study Torah, observe Jewish law, participate in temple movement seminars, and view themselves as religious partners in this project. The temple movement's vision has become transnational. It's no longer a localized Israeli phenomenon. It's an international religious movement with coordinated theological objectives. The archaeological evidence supporting temple reconstruction is more substantial than most. Realize, in 2011, researchers discovered detailed inscriptions at archaeological sites describing the exact dimensions of the Second Temple. In 2015, advanced 3D mapping technology allowed scholars to reconstruct the temple's precise spatial architecture. By 2022, the Temple Institute had completed comprehensive architectural blueprints that incorporated both ancient specifications and modern accessibility, incorporating glass, steel, elevators, and contemporary design elements while maintaining biblical accuracy. These aren't artistic renderings. These are engineer-certified construction documents. Any qualified contractor could theoretically begin construction immediately if political permission were granted. The movement's momentum appears to accelerate precisely when the broader geopolitical situation destabilizes. As Israeli-Palestinian tensions intensify, as regional conflicts escalate, as international attention focuses on Jerusalem's contested status, the Temple movement perceives these moments as indicating divine preparation. They cite the foxes that appeared on the Temple Mount in recent years as fulfilling ancient prophecy from the Book of Lamentations. They reference specific biblical passages suggesting that desolation precedes restoration. They interpret contemporary chaos as confirming ancient predictions. Each instability becomes evidence of their inevitability. The most radical shift involves the movement's relationship with state institutions. In 1984, when the Temple Institute first formed, it operated entirely outside government structures, considered fringe and illegitimate. By 2016, a formal temple lobby was established in the Israeli Knesset, a political faction explicitly dedicated to temple reconstruction. By 2024, multiple government ministers openly advocate for the temple's construction. This represents governmental legitimization of what was once considered extremist ideology. This isn't marginal activism anymore. This is state-adjacent political power. The implications extend beyond religious symbolism into genuine strategic calculation. If a third temple were constructed on the Temple Mount, it would necessarily destroy or fundamentally alter the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the oldest surviving example of Islamic architecture, one of Islam's third holiest sites, a structure that has maintained Muslim worship for over 350 years. The geopolitical ramifications would be apocalyptic. Muslim-majority nations from Morocco to Indonesia have explicitly warned of necessary measures and international legal action if the temple's construction proceeds. Jordan, which retains administrative authority over the site, has declared it will defend the compound by any means necessary. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey have all issued statements characterizing temple construction as an act of war. Yet the temple movement's rabbis speak about this reality with a kind of theological fatalism. They believe that the very chaos such construction would unleash would constitute the messianic tribulation, the apocalyptic upheaval necessary to usher in divine redemption. They are not trying to prevent global conflict. They believe such conflict must occur. They view it as redemptively necessary. This represents a categorical difference from most political movements which seek to minimize conflict. This movement sees conflict as constitutive of their objective. The technological element deserves emphasis. The temple movement benefits from digital coordination in unprecedented ways. Satellite surveillance allows real-time monitoring of the Temple Mount. Advanced 3D scanning documents every existing structure with millimeter precision. Genetic analysis identifies red heifers with perfect accuracy. Communication networks allow rabbis in different countries to coordinate activities instantaneously. If the temple movement in 1984 represented isolated idealism, the temple movement in 2024 represents coordinated, technological infrastructure with governmental support and international coordination. What makes this moment genuinely historic is the convergence of 5 previously separate elements: advanced archaeological knowledge that reconstructs ancient specifications with precision, theological reinterpretation that transforms ancient doctrine to justify contemporary action, political access at the highest governmental levels, technological capability to implement massive construction projects, and, finally, what scholars call apocalyptic impatience, the conviction that events must accelerate toward biblical prophecy fulfillment. These 5 elements have never before aligned simultaneously. The question that echoes through Jerusalem's ancient stones is no longer whether the Third Temple will be reconstructed. That's almost inevitable if political barriers dissolve. The question is when. The Temple movement no longer uses the language of someday, or eventually, or if the Messiah comes. They use language of soon, of imminence, of preparation completion. They speak of the red heifers reaching sacrificial age. They reference specific rabbinical statements about current generations possessing unprecedented permissions. They interpret recent Israeli military successes as divine indication of timing acceleration. They view the chaos in the region not as obstacle, but as confirmation. And perhaps most significantly, they no longer speak in whispers or hidden seminaries. They speak on the Temple Mount itself. They publish architectural designs. They train priests publicly. They call for governmental action explicitly. They have transformed from a marginal fringe movement into something more dangerous and more inevitable. A political faction with resources, coordination, technological sophistication, and direct access to state power. The question is no longer whether they want to rebuild. The question is whether the barriers preventing them will ultimately prove sufficient. And based on current momentum, everyone in Jerusalem knows the answer. The barriers are eroding faster than anyone predicted just 5 years ago. This is not prophecy. This is not speculation. This is documented reality. What ancient rabbis debated in theory, what seemed impossible in 1984, what was arrested in 2024 now stands on the threshold of becoming state policy. The movement to build the Third Temple is not coming. It is here. It is accelerating. And history suggests that when religious conviction, technological capability, political power, and territorial access converge with this intensity, the outcomes rarely remain theoretical.